Today, we're gonna talk about all things gear. What should you wear? What shouldn't you wear? Basic considerations, all that stuff. And first and foremost, let me say that gear can be useful, but it can also be harmful. So we need to make sure that we're using it for the right reasons, not overusing it and not becoming dependent upon it. So my advice always, when people ask me, should I wear knee wraps? Should I wear a belt? Should I have a mouthpiece, which is what I just threw at you? My answer is always maybe, and often sometimes. So if you're gonna wear a belt, my advice is wear it only for maximal lifts. If you're gonna wear gear, try to use it only for maximal lifts. And even then, my advice is to only use it about half the time, because we don't want to be dependent on something like a belt. If I can only get my trunk engaged in online, and I'm pushing into a belt as hard as I can, well, guess what? When you're in the world outside of the gym, you might not have a belt with you and you might need to lift up something heavy. So if you don't understand how to pressurize that container, you're going to be in a world of trouble. So gear isn't bad, but it also isn't automatically good, and you shouldn't automatically use it. So first thing, like I said, that I threw at you is a mouthpiece. And that mouthpiece sits all the way back just at my molar, so I can still breathe really easily. And the point there is to align my jaw in a way that better aligns my spine and to stop me from grinding and gritting my teeth when I'm lifting. So I love that tool. This is one that I use more often than not when I'm heavy lifting. I just don't see harm that comes out of it. Again though, not all the time, because I don't want to become dependent on it. Next up, we've got guards for my hands. This is for when I'm doing pull-ups or anything gymnastics related so that I do not rip. So what we want to use this for, if you're doing high volume pull-ups, of course, we want to make sure that we're not ripping our palms. However, we also want to work on holding the bar in the right place, that monkey grip instead of that palm grip. And you can naturally make it so that your hands don't rip. So certain workouts like Murph may be a time to wear some grips. But if you've got not a ton of volume, I encourage you to try and build up your hands. Next up, we've got our wrist wraps, right? And these things are to support the wrists, especially in like a front rack position or an overhead press. It's a lot of pressure sitting on that wrist. And so tightening this down just provides a little bit of extra support. I use this anytime I'm going overhead and I'm above about 85 or 90% of my max. And again, it's about 50% of the time that I do that. Sometimes I go for it, no wraps. Will I be lighter that day? Maybe, maybe not. But it's important for me to develop the tendons, the everything in my wrist to have some stability there. Now, where this could be useful, if you're really going for broke and you really want to get up as much overhead as you can and overload, every once in a while, gear is really helpful. Next piece is my belt. So I cannot tell you how often I see people use belts incorrectly. Make sure we want this thing to be snug, really snug. And you're gonna just push out into the belt, not just your belly, but all the way around. So the goal isn't to just get the belt as tight as you can, but instead to engage your abs into the belt. This is one that gets overused, so overused. People become dependent on belts anytime they squat, anytime they pull a deadlift. And again, if you do that, you are setting yourself up to get hurt, because all the muscles that you need to create that strong, stiff container are not being worked. You're depending on the belt. And so when you don't have it, or when you get under fatigue, those smaller muscles are gonna give out, and that's when we can get ourselves into trouble. So only wear that belt about half the time. Only wear it when you're above 85%. Even then, don't wear it all the dang time. Next up, last thing on the belt. Don't get one of these kinds of belts. This has been in my gym forever, and I don't know that it's ever been used. So this skinny section here is useless. We want a big fat belt. Again, you're pushing into it. There might not be anything to push against. Moving down, I just lost one knee wrap, but that's okay. There's another one hanging out right here. So this knee wrap is here to add some tension. So when I go down to squat, I have almost like a trampoline effect on this knee. It also keeps the knee warm which is going to make it a little bit easier to keep some blood flow and to make sure that those knees don't cool off in between sets. So the wraps are for more of that sort of spring effect, a little bit of protective the knees. These sort of knee sleeves, everyone thinks these are for support. They're not. They do nothing to support your knees. These are here as warmers, just like the wraps. Again, the wraps get a little bit more bounce. They stretch and send you back up. These are literally just warmth, so that in between sets, you have some compression, you keep blood flow going to that knee. Last but not least, we've got our Olympic weightlifting shoe here. So Oli shoes are a good tool because they have a heel, right? This back section goes up about 1.5 inches. So my foot is like this. So when I go down into a squat, I've got a little bit of a heel so that I don't come up onto my toes. And it just makes it a little bit easier to stay upright in that squat shape. And when we are doing something like an overhead squat, really matters if I'm here versus if I'm here and have to throw that shoulder in a wonky position. Again, do not wear these shoes all the time. You need to squat in flat shoes. Get something that's stable. Practice. You're not going to have that heel always. All right, guys, I hope that answers some gear questions. We will see you soon.